Hi, computerized accounting class. Welcome to the second part of this series. In this series, we're going to be looking at functions in Excel. So we're going to use a tax problem here. Instead of using the actual US tax brackets, that's a little bit complicated. We're going to make up a problem here. I'm sorry, I have a cold, so we're going to do the best we can with it. But we made up a country here called Simpleville, so we can just have two different tax brackets to keep it simple. The first tax bracket, the taxable amount is between 0 and 20,000. The base amount of the tax is going to be 0, but they're going to pay 10% of the amount over $0. The other tax bracket here, if the amount is over 20,000, they're going to pay a base of 2,000 because that's the 10% applied to all the previous 20,000. So they're going to pay a base of 2,000 plus 20% of the amount over 20,000. So we effectively have two brackets here, the 10% bracket for the amount of taxable income between 0 and 20,000, and we have a 20% bracket for the amount between 20,000 and on to infinity. In addition to that, here are all the population of the country of Simpleville, 20 different people. They only have first names because they like keeping things simple. Here are their incomes. But in addition to their incomes, they have something like the U.S. has for their personal exemptions, or dependent exemptions, like for child, etc. So for every exemption that a person has, they have an exemption value, and the IRS would define this. Ours is an imaginary problem, but we're defining it as $4,050. And it tells us the number of exemptions for each employee. So there's 20 different people here, and realistically this could go much larger, so we want to use the power of Excel to solve this and not just solve it one by one. So our first step is going to be to calculate taxable income. How much that income is taxable? Well, all of the income is taxable except for the amount that is not. They have one exemption. The value of an exemption, we're going to multiply it by the $4,050. So notice what we've done here. All of their income, which this blue one is all of their income, is taxable, except for the amount that's exempted. They have one exemption. One exemption is worth $4,050. Now this formula is going to be good, but there's going to be a problem with it later. Alright, all these are called relative references. These are referring, this one is referring to the cell that's 1, 2 over. So this blue J7. It's saying I'm going to look at the cell that's 2 over from this position. If I change the position down to here, it's going to move 1, 2 over. And that's good. I wanted it to do that for the income and for the exemption. I wanted to grab the data relevant to that person. But this one I don't want moving down. This one I want staying perfectly still. So we want to change it to something called an absolute reference. Not a relative reference, but an absolute reference. What we can do is we can go to that cell that represents this one that needs to stay fixed, and we can press the key F4. Press F4 just once, and it adds the two different dollar figure signs. You can add the dollar figure signs separately, and you can cycle through F4 if you wish. There's 4 different scenarios here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. But we want the one where both of them are fixed. We don't want the row or the column changing it. Sometimes you want just one of the two staying the same and the other changing, but we're not going to get into that kind of detail right now. So this one's an absolute reference. I'm going to show you what happens now when I copy it. Or let's go back a step and see what happens if we don't do that. Alright, we got our base formula. It works perfectly for the first one, but look what happens when we copy down the formula. It's like, Excel's like, what? Because let's see what it's doing. You see that one's moving down. We don't want this one moving down. That one's moving down relative to it. We want it pulling. See, now it's pulling this number when it should be pulling that number. It's moving down each cell with it because it's defined relative. We want to define it absolute. So we press F4 on it. And now copying down the formula like I showed you, you just look at this little square here. You grab it. You left click, hold it down, and then you can copy everything down. We got some negative taxable incomes. Let's go ahead and change that. Alright, a little better. Alright, the next step, we need to actually tax this income. So this is the amount of tax that we're going to plug into this table. Alright. We're going to use a function here. The function is called the if statement. You can go here and get a complete list of functions. Here we can see it here. Now there's three inputs to this if statement. There's first a logical test. Excel is going to evaluate whether that logical test is true or false. If that statement becomes true, it's going to do the first thing that we assign here. And if it's false, it's going to do the second thing. Notice between each argument or input there's a comma. So that's how we're going to have to do this. We're going to first have to give it a logical test. We want to know if that is greater than or equal to that is greater than 20,000. Alright, if it's greater than 20,000, then we're going to be in this bracket, so they're going to pay equal 2,000 plus 20%. Remember, 20% in a decimal is 0.2 times the amount over, whoops, we need a times sign, times L7 minus 20,000. Only the amount over 20,000. Value of false. Okay, if it's not over 20,000, it's under 20,000. So the amount then would be equal to the taxable income times 10%, because they would be in the 10% bracket. All of it would be taxable by 10%. There's no basic. There's plus 0 if we wanted to, but we don't need to. Let's see if it works. Alright, so we had the logical test, whether the amount is greater than 20,000 or not. We had the value if it's true. If it's true, they're going to be taxed at the 20% bracket. So we follow the formula for the 20% bracket. If it's not true, then they're in the 10% bracket and they're going to be taxed at 10%. Alright, we're going to go and format this, add the comma, and get rid of these decimals. Control 1 to change the format, currency, add the dollar. Alright, so there with the formula, imagine if we had so many more employees like they do in a company. It would just be so easy once we set our formula up right. It becomes more complicated as we add more brackets, though. We need more complicated if statements. That's why we just chose 2 here to keep it simple. That introduces you to a basic programming tool, the if statement. And there are a lot more functions in Excel. All you gotta do is click here and you'll find a lot more functions. Find one on all, financial, date and time, So we'll use some of these later. Next time we're going to do an amortization schedule for a house or a car note. So we'll be using some of the financial calculations, but all different types of formulas. Alright, let's finish the spreadsheet. Alright, we want to total up. Let's go and total up the total incomes. I'm going to show you a shortcut here. It's called Alt equals. Alt equals will automatically type in the sum function. You can do this manually, but Alt equals will automatically guess at what you want to total up. It's going to total up all this, and that's exactly what I want to. If we didn't know about Alt equals, we could just enter equals sum and then select everything. But I'm telling you, every shortcut you know is going to pay off eventually. Doesn't make much sense to total the exemptions. Taxable income, we could total Alt equals. This should be the same number either way. No, this one needs to be defined as the sum of all this. Yes. Yeah, 96,415. Now we can calculate the average tax rate that the entire population paid by taking the amount of tax they paid divided by their taxable income. We can get to 14.61 of their taxable income was paid in taxes overall for this population. But that's about it for this video. I bet your instructor will post a similar video. Let me know if you guys have any questions or your instructor, and next time we'll be doing an amortization schedule over either a house note or a car note, so we'll see the more tools that we can use in Excel. So alright, I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye bye.